Before I continue with the topic of personal plasticity, let me make the crucial distinction between those people who have a biochemical imbalance coupled with behavioral problems and those people who have psychological problems that precede or at least are coupled with physiological anomalies in their bodies. So it's a continuum where on the one end there are those who are justified in taking medication, who are in need of taking medication in order to function properly and in order to maintain a mental well-being. And on the other end of this continuum there are those who take medication, but perhaps it's unnecessary and even aggravates their problems more because they treat the surface, or they deal with the surface, they treat the symptoms. They are not dealing with the roots of the problem, and they preserve and reinforce the psychological problem by treating the symptoms only. And of course it's very hard to draw a boundary between these two categories. And it's a very complicated issue to decide where one belongs in this continuum. But what I am talking about in terms of personal plasticity pertains to the latter group, to the group where I think the main issue is the extent to which mood disorder is the result of maladaptive habits and skills that we adopt in our attempts to cope with our perceived reality. And I say perceived because what counts is not what happens or happened in our early childhood, in our formative years, but what counts is how we make sense of the things that happened, of the things that happen and surround us. How we make sense of the events and circumstances that we are implicated in. And that's the crucial issue. Now, to address this issue in metaphorical ways, let me say that imagine a river with rocks in it. These rocks bend the flow of this river. Now think of this in this way. Each one of us is like a pattern in a stream that is warped by a set of rocks or a configuration of rocks. And this stream is the external world, the social reality we are implicated in, and the way it bends is the way it appears to us. It's the way we make sense out of this stream as we dynamically interact with this stream, with this social world. And of course the rocks that bend this flow are our habits, our skills that we adopt in our attempt to cope with reality, with this stream. So we are pattern, the way the stream is warped. Now the question could be, whence the rocks? From where come the particular configuration of the rocks? The particular way we interact with reality. Now, of course, it's partly to do with what we inherit in terms of genes, and it's partly to do with how we experience reality. So, the influences of our parents, of our contemporaries, of our culture. But with regards to experience, what is crucial is that we have an active role, and as we grow up more and more, we have an active role in sculpturing or shaping the inflow of experience, the way it appears to us, because it always appears to us, it shows forth in accordance with the skills that we adopt. And the skills are the product of unconsciously perceived influences of other people, of our parents, our friends, of practices, cultural practices, of the books we read, the videos we watch on YouTube, for example. So our skills are the result of unconsciously perceived influences, as well as conscious rehearsal and conscious practice, which are subject to further conscious modification and regulation. So when we learn to speak, or to drive a car, ride a bike, or to juggle, we set up new neural architectures in our brains that is possible through conscious integration of the different parts of the brain. And when I say conscious, I'm not talking about something that pertains to the issue of free will. I'm talking about individuals, which belongs to another level of discussion. In terms of learning, I'm talking about individuals in a social context. So, the point is that personality, or more specifically, the affective style that characterizes a personality, is the result of adaptation and learning, guided as it is by innate propensities, but still it's a result of adaptation, which means we have the power to reshape the affective style of our personality. We have the power to rearrange the rocks in the stream so that the stream won't curl in on itself as it flows around the rocks. It won't limit itself by forming disturbances in the flow. In order to habituate such thought and feeling patterns, first of all we have to become aware of our skills and habits, because becoming aware entails our ability of abstracting ourselves away from the flow of these habitual patterns, and it allows for a broader perspective. Observation allows us to break out of the cycles that bind us, the self-limiting negative dynamics that bind us. And in a second step, in our attempt at re-engineering aspects of our personality, we can have recourse to certain practices which aim at automatizing certain thought and feeling patterns. So, if we can draw a parallel between our physical skills and our psychological skills, then to say that the neural architecture underpinning our behaviors and actions is basically plastic and malleable, it means that the highly automatized psychosomatic cycles that run in our minds admit of partial reconfigurations as well. Because by consistently practicing certain exercises, the synaptic connections responsible for carrying out those actions are strengthened, like when we learn to drive a car or ride a bike or juggle. And these practices then, these conscious practices then become more and more automatic, and that's the point. And to draw the analogy to a close, let's say that by rehearsal that is consistent and persistent enough, we can automatize new patterns of feelings and thoughts. Because if I practice something long enough, it becomes part of my